Today we are speaking with Martin Leann, CEO at Volt. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Before we get started, Martin, why don't you just share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, happy to. Born and raised in Norway, came to the States, well, I guess now just a couple months away from my 10-year here, and came here to start companies. It was a pretty, I guess, typical story for international students coming to the US. Now get to kind of live out my dream every day, running a company. Had a lot of experience with multitude of different startups, from kind of tech-based to also physical, medical-based medtech startups. But yeah, now find myself in the intersect of SMS and infrastructure. So pretty interesting spot. Not where I saw myself when I was first traveling here.
How'd you get there?
So for Bolt, we actually, me and my co-founder, ran a SMS marketing company for about 3.5 years before starting Bolt. So we felt the pain ourselves, and it got so dire that we ended up just wanting to solve it and pivoted into what Volt is today. Basically, with the last company, what we realized was missing was each of the vendors in the space. Now I'm talking Twilio, Telnix, Bandwidth, Cinch, all of the companies that fall under kind of CPaaS. And for people who's not too technical, it would be any company that you would send a request using an API to send a message, not using an interface. Each of those companies were kind of touting the same. Hey, we can cut your cost in half if you switch over to us. We have the same infrastructure as everybody else. It's very straightforward. And none of them actually did. The error codes that come back is completely different. The microservices that handle the compliance and what is required to build was completely different. So we found ourselves, after running the text marketing product for so many years, spending more time dealing with SMS delivery issues and building back office services than building revenue driving solutions for our customers. And we were like, wow, why is this so hard? Like, is this something only we are struggling with? Can we maybe talk to a couple of our competitors and see? And that's what we did. And we realized that, wow, every single company, it sounds like a big statement, but in the world, that is building into these programmatic SMS senders are having to build virtually the exact same back office infrastructure time and time again. And to put it into context, these infrastructures can take between 3 to 6 months to fully roll out and get steady and stable. So that results in millions of dollars in development spend just going completely down the drain every single year. So it became a big problem, and we realized, like, well, if nobody's tackling it, then we might as well. And that's what we decided to do and started doing in the summer of 2021. And since then, Volt's continued to grow, and kind of hearing more and more from our customers. And we're definitely glad we made the decision.
That sounds great. And can you tell me a little bit about your customers? Like, who would use this?
Yeah, so really it's any company that is building into a company like Twilio or Telnix or Bandwidth. So any company that's programmatically setting up SMS functionality. So what this looks like is usually CRM companies, or we even have banks that sending two-factor authentication messages. It's critical that that message actually reaches their customer's handset. And if they don't, they rarely get the feedback to be precise enough to allow them to make actionable decisions. And yeah, there's about 600 or 70,000 companies worldwide that's currently built into these infrastructures. So, but it does look like a wide gap of multiple different companies. But the ones that we're working with today, that's kind of the early adopters of this, is primarily call and contact center software, CRM companies that focus on niche industries, other text marketing products, or even just brands and political agencies that's running multiple campaigns, but sending such high volumes that they can't afford to have bad deliverability percentages.
Got it. So can you share a couple customer stories how people are implementing this in a real world situation?
Absolutely. I think the best example there is probably talking about this real estate CRM company that approached us in the end of 2023. When they reached out to us, they were at a point where they had 14 full-time engineers purely focused on the back office for their SMS. So SMS was critical for them, but they were a CRM. Like, SMS wasn't their like core business, but still they had to spend so much money on just the upkeep of it, just keeping the lights on. When they came to us, they were in the middle of switching from one provider to another. I'm not going to say the names of each, but they had a pretty short timeline and they wanted to move away. And they had about like 2,500 or so different companies that was using them and their CRM for SMS. So when they come to us, not only did they have problems with the deliverability, but they had problems with getting them registered in the first place. So due to compliance changes that happened in the US in 2021, now every company, you could no longer just go to Atulio and just rent a phone number and start sending. Now you needed to prove that the sender is a real US business. So now you had to fill all this kinds of information in that basically made it seem like every single company had to file taxes just to be able to be allowed to send messages to their customers. Their EIN and their address needed to match what was on the IRS site. Their website needed to clearly state that they weren't selling data to third parties, which when you then think of, well, so who's using this for SMS? It's oftentimes coffee shops, it's mechanics, it's anybody who's sending updates for a customer's status. And there's not a lot of them that have a privacy policy on their website that is specifically and explicitly written to guard their customers from third-party data sales, because that's just so far out of their periphery. So even just communicating that and being able to set them up for success was his own thing. But I digress. All of that to say, this company had 14 full-time engineers and had a huge undertaking to be able to move over. 6 months later, we had everything fully moved over, ready to go. And now they are at a point where they only have 2 full-time engineers focused on the SMS infrastructure. The remaining 12 was now able to focus on other areas of the company to be able to improve operationally. So huge cost savings for them. They saved about $1 million a year just in headcount alone. And also, of course, now they have full visibility into their customers sending. So whenever there's a phone number that gets blocked or any issues with their providers, they get notified immediately and they're able to handle it.
Yeah, that's really great. And that the compliance part is not something that I would think about either.
No, it's
Especially.
true. Yeah, we run into that all the time. It's most of our job is honestly like kind of educating. We
Hmm.
talk to CRM companies, like one that we talked to last week that had 90% of their like attempted registrations failed on the first attempt. And like this is registrations where they have to fill in all this information, huge load of information they have to pull from their customers. And when it fails, not only do they pay $49 for that registration attempt that is now down the drain, but they also don't get specific feedback on what they need to change to be approved. So they actually ended up tracking that back to 20% of their churn stemmed from just not being able to understand registration alone. So being able to then work with Volt, keep their contract with the provider of choice that they had, but letting us take that over so they didn't have to rely on just complete like lack of visibility. And then we're now able to check those websites, check the information and everything to tell them whether or not they need to edit something before they even submit the information. It just turns the experience on its head and now makes it possible for those customers to not pay $100 a month to be able to text only to be told 3 weeks later, sorry, but your registration failed. It's like, okay, well, so what did I pay you for? It's natural to understand why that would cost churn.
Yeah, you're that magic sauce running in the background.
That's what we like to think of it. Yeah.
So, I'd like to talk a little bit about SMS. So, why people need you and why they would want to use SMS. So, you mentioned, getting reminders and updates, say if you have a delivery or you have an appointment, something like that. How else are people using SMS?
Yeah, so I mean, it's got to be also prefaced that SMS is primarily big in North America. There's very few other countries where it is still the primary communication channel. Most other countries have moved over to WhatsApp or even Telegram, and being able to kind of support those as well is, of course, going to be important moving forward. But for SMS in the US, it still remains a really big trusted channel where customers still have open rates within the first 3 minutes of 90% and an overall open rate in total of 98%, which is unparalleled to any other channel. That being said, there's obviously a right message at the right time. You don't send a newsletter by SMS and expect the same kind of welcome response as you do with an email. It's got to be timely and it's got to be on something that the consumer actually cares about. If they were interested in a deal for e-commerce, for instance, then it might be worth it. But if they never signed up for an e-commerce kind of marketing campaign, but you suddenly receive it, you're going to get a bunch of opt-outs. So it's honestly only as effective as whether or not the customer expects it. But whenever the customer does expect it, it's hard to find a channel that is as impactful.
So any other use cases besides saying, ads and reminders? Like how else are businesses using it?
So for being able to finalize loan applications is a really big one. Being able to get secure links to secure platforms, especially as people are on the go, being able to see the terms and being able to sign that then and there. It's also for being able to schedule and reschedule has been pretty big one. And then of course you got the classic kind of two-factor authentication messages that a lot of banks are still relying on SMS for, primarily as a fallover now, but like for like if email doesn't work or if their two-factor authentication on a authentication app doesn't work anymore. But that being said, there is still a large chunk of the market that will probably never truly set up with the authentication pieces, just due to the fact that it adds additional complexity. That there is some tech literacy that still needs to be bridged.
And you mentioned also, some trends of people moving to WhatsApp and Signal and I guess other platforms. Why do you feel the US is kind of slow to that game?
It's a difficult one to kind of pinpoint because right now WhatsApp is a growing channel in the US. I think for a long time now, for multiple years, they were trying to hold back with their own channel where they were trying to get RCS, so kind of rich messaging to be able to be used as kind of Google's answer to Meta's WhatsApp. The one thing that was a little difficult though was RCS was taking a while to roll out. They've been trying to do so now since 2007. And here we are, 2025. They are just now looking to get it rolled out at the end of this year. But still, we're missing one carrier to approve the final little piece of the puzzle there. And Apple still needs to actually do their end of the encryption of that message. But at that point, RCS has been kind of touted as this new standard for businesses. The big experience difference for consumers is going to be that there's finally now a verified logo at the top of the message that you receive, which instantly kind of dissuades from the stress or the worry that maybe this text message about my toll fees not being paid might not be from the state's toll department, right? So it's those type of communications that's going to definitely lean into RCS as opposed to everything else. And it does become kind of pre-installed on everybody's phone. So there's not a separate experience like it is with WhatsApp. But if you were to ask me, which one do I think will win out in North America? It's hard to argue that RCS would be able to beat the momentum that's happening with WhatsApp, since there is so many people moving into and so many family members of people who use WhatsApp religiously for everything from buying houses to ordering pizza, where that's just what they're used to doing, especially in South America, where right now, like those use cases haven't been fully implemented by businesses in North America, but the consumer base is already on WhatsApp. So you're not having to teach them a new behavior if you could just meet them where they are. So if, I mean, Google has deep pockets. So I believe Google can definitely move mountains on that front, but they're going to have to move quick if they want to beat out WhatsApp.
I use WhatsApp, but I'm not making purchases on it. But I also find like when I'm in Europe or I'm not in the United States, that's my mode of communication.
Yeah.
So it's interesting the choices that people make based on what the providers put in front of them. We're such like the US is such an Apple, Google focused tech economy that you're going to use their technologies or their modes of communication. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about you and, your experience at Volt. And can you just tell me a little bit about your day and what's most important to you?
Yeah, so I mean, right now, I think the biggest piece is I'm trying to build around this fact that like there was nothing like Volt previously. now we're kind of changing behavior. We're lucky that we can draw some parallels to email for that, where previously, like if you go back 15 years ago, people were still hiring email server specialists. You would have email server towers like in your office. If anybody were to suggest that now, just because they wanted email functionality for their software, it would be a preposterous suggestion. But SMS is still like that. And that's the status quo that we're trying to change. So right now, it goes a lot into making sure that we communicate and educate the market. So for my day today, it's a lot of course, doing podcasts, making sure to communicate with our customers and getting in front of them. And also, of course, talking to the overall market and the bigger players in the space. Right now, we are lucky that we're in a positioning where we're not competing against somebody like Twilio, Telemax Bandwidth. We're helping their customers be successful with using software that they're already paying for. It's very interesting. Previously, it was selling something that consumers were aware existed as an option, and it was arguing why we were better than others. It's a completely different approach when it's selling people on, no, you don't have to have your engineers wreck their minds on a complaint from a customer saying that a message didn't deliver and that wastes 13 hours. Like that no longer has to be the case. Let's change that. So it's a unique one, but we're lucky that we can kind of follow the play bigger book. It's definitely a huge recommendation I would give to any kind of CEO or founder that's listening, making sure to read that one. It definitely changed the way that we went about our building a Vault. It's been really, really steadfast from that.
So if you're like selling Vote into an organization, who would be the person that would be like your primary buyer, or who would be the advocate who would like really understands the problem and would immediately know that this is a great solution for me?
Yeah, so for us, it is three different types of personas. It's either going to be the CEO, this kind of sees the pain all the way to the top or hears about the pain. Then there's the CTO that is kind of seeing his team having to prioritize building internal tools over and over and over again, where it becomes more of a decision of is it buy versus build. And then you also got the product managers that end up having to let the kind of prioritizations happen and also hears from the customer side. So those usually end up being the primary decision makers, but it is kind of multifaceted. The way we look at it is the element of ensuring that your SMS infrastructure works. We kind of call that messaging ops or messaging operations for long, where that is kind of a multi-department role. Some really big text marketing companies out there have the director of messaging ops. But most companies that we work with are still too young or too small to already have their director of messaging ops. And it really falls between how many customers are complaining, so customer success, how is our engineering team and resources being pulled due to that, due to those bugs that get flagged all the time. That goes to kind of product and engineering. And then, of course, you got the financial buyer at the very top with the CFO or CEO that's sitting there being like, well, I guess if we're paying per API attempt, like we are with SMS and not an SMS that delivers, if we got our delivery rate from a 40% to an 80%, then we're paying half of what we would have, or at least getting twice as much for what we're spending. So the equations and kind of the talks are pretty easy once we hit that. Our average sales cycle right now averages around a month. So it usually is a no-brainer once we get in front of the right person and the right team, because the pains are already felt and we're already communicating. Hey, I know you're really hating this. Everybody does. Let us take the pain away from you. Let us handle that headache, and then let your team actually focus on new revenue driving solutions as opposed to just upkeep.
Yeah, it sounds like you found yourself a good niche and an easy win.
Yeah, it's certainly a niche.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
And then what about, let's say I'm a marketer. So on the marketing side, I mean, marketers can make a lot of mistakes in choosing the right strategy with SMS. So, what do you see as some of those mistakes and any suggestions on how to make improvements?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the quickest, most valuable advice I can give to any marketer that's dealing with SMS is never use a bit.ly link. So SMS is charged per 160 characters. So link shorteners are very attractive from a financial standpoint. You can say more in your message and include the link while keeping it as counted as one billable message. However, T-Mobile hates bit.ly links. So if you're sending a bit.ly link even once, or if any of your customers, if you're a CRM company with thousands of customers and you have one frontline person that just sends a Bitly link, that number will now never be able to reach another T-Mobile customer again, unless it's changed out. So huge, very typical kind of landmine that people step on. Beyond that, I would say messaging content changes a lot, but the same thing stays true for what the carriers call shaft C. So that is kind of aggressive language, alcohol, tobacco, cannabis, and it doesn't have to be the specific word. It could literally just be like a innuendo or even emojis gets massively blocked by all carriers. And I think most of the ones that get in trouble are actually the innocent ones. We saw a use case with a landscaping company that had a special on weed whacking, and they had weeding as like a hey weeding special in their text message, and they got completely blocked, yelled at their CRM and was like, how could you possibly sell us a faulty service? And in fact it was their fault, but being able to then kind of third party communicate that as like a part of the analytics, like, hey, this is what happened, we're going to give you the contact list again so you can resend to them, but we changed your phone number so now you're able to actually reach, please change this copy, because that's what got you in trouble.
I can see how that could be mistaked, but very different thing.
Yeah, very, very much so.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of tech spam out there. UPS, the post office.
Yeah.
I'm getting stuff for, recruiting and jobs.
Mhm.
And a lot of them do use Bitly links. So can you just make initial assumption that if you see a Bitly link that it could be spam?
I would. I mean, I
Yeah.
think for the most of them, they don't even register. And most of those, I mean, I call it text message kind of generously because most of them are actually creating fake iMessage accounts so they can use a laptop to send a mass message out. But they're sending it using the email, not the SMS. So it's phone numbers and text messaging that the carriers don't even see. That's the interesting thing of all these new channels that's popping up. I think it's with RCS, we're also now seeing a ton of spam. And the reason is the messages are decrypted or encrypted, I mean, and they aren't being decrypted by the carriers. So the carriers can't even see the content. So they can't even see that it's spam. So the only time they see it, they are only like whenever the customer report it. So yeah, I would say there is a lot of SMS spam and messaging spam in general that people need to be wary of. And the sad part is it's kind of hurting the channel as it stands. The good thing is the carriers have actually started cracking down pretty hard. I think they found that messaging in North America dropped by about 28% over the last 2 years. And that's not due to the fact that real companies aren't sending more because they're growing about 20% every like year over year. But that is purely kind of associated to spam messaging being stopped.
I think it would help, people like me or other people out there if you have the answer to this. So when you do say delete, report as spam,
Mhm.
do you know what happens afterwards? Like, does something actually happen?
Yes, yes. So it does. So right now, there's kind of two ways to opt out of a message. There is the text stop to opt out, and then there's the report to spam. If you text stop to opt out, that goes to the carrier, and the carrier sees that you're opted out. It also tracks and doubles as a kind of protection for you as a consumer. That if you opted out from text messages from Nike, then if they send you another text message, they kind of breach TCPA. You can send them a cease and desist. And if they send another one, they owe you $1,500 per text. So it can be kind of lucrative. But if you look at the kind of carrier side of that, the carriers see how many of the customers opted out. And if a campaign that was approved and went through every channel gets over a certain threshold, so think between like 4 to 6%, then the carriers shuts down that phone number because they can tell, hey, our most valued customer, which is you and me and our cell phone plans, are being hurt by this. We don't want to risk that. And we certainly don't want them to go to a competitor. So we're going to stop the business messaging before we would have our customers be hurt. So they're very good at that. And if you click the report button, it does the same thing. The only difference is it sends an example of the message to the carriers. Now the carriers can also track what was sent to you. And if they see that that spammer sends another message on another phone number with the exact same copy, then they can stop them a lot sooner. So reporting as spam is definitely more effective to stop the kind of source of it, but the text stop is probably more so for kind of opting out for consumer communication.
I think that's cool that a copy of what you saw was sent to them. I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
No, it's really good because yeah, nobody likes spam and it's run rampant. So yeah, it's got to be stopped.
So you also mentioned that you're kind of one of the few in your space. Are there, like, what's your market like? Are there a lot of players? Are there a few players? And how are you making yourself stand out?
Yeah, I mean, so it's a cardinal sin to say that you have no competitors. But I mean, right now we're lucky that we've been a first mover on the messaging ops category, like suite of solutions. That being said, like our biggest competitor per se would be kind of CTOs that would rather build it in-house versus buy a solution. I think that's going to be less and less. Right now, we don't run into it often. Most of the customers that we talk to have obviously wanted to schedule a meeting with us, or they were a referral from like one of our partners in the messaging space that they are kind of sending messages with, but they're running into enough problems and they're blaming the provider. And the provider wants us to be kind of a filter in between and tell them, no, 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 this was your customer sending a Bitly link, or this was actually their fault. So that way it saves their relationship and saves them from churn. But yeah, no, so it's definitely kind of a unique approach for now. But I think as we continue to grow and as we continue to prove out that this is something that the companies really need and really want, I would be an idiot to not consider that there's going to be competitors that pop up. And I will even go as far as to say that I welcome that because educating the market on the fact that no, you don't have to build and rebuild your sending engine every year and a half. It's such an obvious statement, but since there wasn't like kind of solutions for it, yeah, we just got to educate the market, and that's expensive. So if other people wanted to foot that bill too, I would certainly welcome it.
So what do you besides podcasts, what are you doing right now to educate?
So the biggest piece is probably getting in front of the actual gateways that we're working with. So we're partnering very heavily with them. That's a large chunk of our current leads. Then we also do a lot of conferences. We most recently went to a conference in Barcelona, really big for telecom, for MWC, where we presented there and communicated in front of the messaging providers and aggregators and kind of the higher ups on why we exist and just kind of cause awareness. That seems to be very impactful and helpful. Every time we get to kind of present in front of the wider audience, either we end up with direct customer referrals or partners that want to make sure that they can send more customers our way. It's yeah, conferences and podcasts. And then we still haven't actually spent a single dollar on marketing. All of our customers come from LinkedIn DMs, actually. So we have a lot of the companies that we work with, since of course they have SMS functionality in their software. That's usually a feature that they list on their website. So since we know who is the people that feel and hear about the complaints and the issues, LinkedIn DMing them usually has a really high conversion rate. I think not by a personal basis, but by a company basis of the ones that we identify as good targets. I think we last time we ran the numbers, we had about a 70% conversion rate from kind of outreach to contact to being willing to kind of jump on a call to talk more.
That's really good. And do you have any idea like what the TAM is or the market for that?
Yeah, I mean, for right now, it would just be kind of like a subsect of what the overall messaging market is. So, it would be north of about 8 billion, I think was the last time we ran the numbers on it. Just due to the fact that if you're spending $100,000 with Twilio, then on average, you have at least two full-time engineers on staff. So that would come out to about 25%. So if we did 25% of the global CPaaS spend, then it would be much, much further north than 8 billion. But we're doing a very discounted version of that for what we believe the messaging ops space will be.
Well, you have so much opportunity, almost like handed to you in a way, but not everything in a business is perfect.
No,
So if there's one thing you'd like to fix right now happening at Volt, what would that be?
oh, I would say right now we have to ensure that we can get kind of more like direct people in front of us. I think being able to kind of setting up the customer funnel to be almost self-serve is probably the biggest next step. That would be exciting for us. Since of course right now there is so much to navigate. And we only want to work with good actors because we certainly don't want to become a tool that helps any bad actor being able to get through. So being able to help balance that has been why we have been kind of, hey, you need to talk to a salesperson to be able to convert and work with us. But we understand that that of course kind of eliminates some potential customers that just doesn't want to talk to salespeople, especially since CTOs are usually the first step. Then oftentimes that's not the persona of who loves to jump on a sales call for checking a new tech tool. So that's going to be important.
Is there a way for an offering like this to be product-led growth model?
Absolutely. The biggest piece is there needs to be checks and balances in between, but allowing customers to sign up and create their own account, get their kind of websites vetted is a really good way to check kind of what type of companies would we be working with, and then they can get some value before we start working with them. There's a couple different ways, but that's going to be key. And then, of course, I think overall company awareness or customer awareness is going to be key as well. We've certainly hit like a good, hey, we got the problem solution fit. Now it's making sure that the product can do the entirety of the heavy lifting for their dev team and they can get that communication throughout. Once that hits true kind of product market fit for that, yeah, then it's going to be all about education. And I think that's going to be probably more so on the marketing side, ensuring that we can get the world to know, and like us screaming from the rooftops, never build directly to a CPaaS again, because you're only building it once. You're not building it for good, and save yourself a lot of headache down the low road.
Okay. And over the next, I'd say, year or two, where do you see the company going?
So right now, I mean, we got a lot of new features that we're launching. We're actually got to launch this week. It's going to be exciting to get in front of our customers with the new features. I would say the biggest piece is ensuring that we can get the product to fully serve the entire function as opposed to have any human involvement at all. It's going to be the biggest piece for this year. And then, of course, getting to the point where we can have a lot of the customers that we're set to unlock with these new features, get some good usage out of that. Hopefully, then get even more customer feedback to be able to improve it further. And yeah, by the end of the year, I hope that we are able to kind of step on the gas on kind of the more marketing muscle that we so far haven't really had to or needed to be able to step on. I hope at that point it's going to be just an element of who can we get in front of and how can we ensure that they feel comfortable testing out Volt. And as we're kind of seeing with our metrics, and like last month's net dollar retention was about 120%. So if we can continue to see those type of metrics, then hopefully like retention and everything else should remain good, and we can just scale from there.
So if someone wanted to learn more about Volt or Martin, get in touch with you, what would be the best place for them to go to get in touch or to learn more?
I would say to stay on brand, always feel free to text me. My number is open, 5443-7368. Or you can shoot me an email at martin.leann@textavolt.com, or just check us out on our website, textavolt.com, to be able to talk to sales or even create a free account to be able to at least see how the platform works and how our dev docs work. But we're more than happy to consult any company that's currently building programmatically into Twilio, Telemetry, Bandwidth, whoever. I'll be able to optimize that and save a lot of money.
Sounds great. Well, thank you very much for being on the Smart Stack. I enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.